All set.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our public meeting. And so I would like to call the meeting to order. And I'd like to start with the land acknowledgement that that we are in the land and surrounded by water, originally inhabited by indigenous peoples who have traveled this area since time immemorial. This territory is within the lands honored by the Wampum treaties, agreements between the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and Lenni and Lenape and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Specifically, we would like to acknowledge the presence of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi, and the Huron-Wendat peoples. And we are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture while remaining committed to moving forward respectively with all nations, all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. I'd like to acknowledge that reporting out of a closed session, we did have a closed session meeting at 4 o'clock today, and it was under section 239, 2 B, C, E, G, H, and I, and J of the Municipal Act 2001. And at the meeting, the members were given updates regarding a land acquisition, a matter before the Ontario, the OLT, and personal matter about an identifiable employee, and report out on potential land acquisition partnerships and funding negotiations. So with that, members of council, any disclosure of pecuniary interest on the agenda is presented to you this afternoon. Councilor Jobin.
Yes, through you, your worship, to members of council and public. At the in-camera session, I did log in late, so I was not able to declare my conflict of pecuniary interest at the beginning, but I did remove myself at item D and was no longer taking part at that time, as it affects lands possibly with our family.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Jobin. We'll have that duly recorded. Thank you. Nothing further to disclose, so we'll have that in the minutes recorded. So the introduction and purpose of our meeting today is to hear public comment on a zoning bylaw amendment application on a property that's located at 7035 10th Concession Road to permit a standalone additional residential unit, also known as an ARU. I will call upon the manager, Mr. Jeffries, to summarize the application in the report and also recommendations. Mr. Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, members of council. This is the first of 3 public meetings that council is hosting tonight that pertain to additional residential units, or ARUs, as they're known in short. And it's from our perspective, it's good to see the community embracing this form of housing, as the province has made it clear that it's part of the solution to the housing shortage and affordability crisis that we're experiencing. So the first application pertains to, if we can go to attachment 1, pertains to a 9.6 hectare agricultural parcel that you see outlined in red here on the west side of 10th Concession Road, about 600 meters north of County Road 8. The majority of the property is agricultural in nature, and the land surrounding it are also largely agricultural, with some natural heritage, woodlots, and an existing golf course. I should say existing, not former golf course. The Royal 47 Golf Club is to the west and south of the subject property. Next attachment, please. This shows a close-up of the area occupied by the primary dwelling, which is a 2,900 square foot dwelling. The proposed ARU, which is currently a garden suite, which is 1,040 square feet in area. And then there are some accessory structures, farm buildings on the property as well. In 2012, a zoning bylaw amendment was passed for temporary use of that garden suite. And that continued up until just recently, when that temporary period was over. And the applicants now are hoping to rezone the property to make this a permanent ARU. And in order to do that, we have to have this public meeting and hear from interested stakeholders on that proposal. The property is currently zoned agricultural zone A, so the proposal is to put it into a site-specific agricultural A zone that would permit a standalone additional residential unit. The provincial policy statement it hasn't quite caught up in terms of the policy directly related to ARUs, even though the Planning Act has specifically said that municipalities are to permit these. But there is some general supportive language in the PPS that says that municipalities shall provide for a range and mix of housing options to meet the current and future needs of residents by facilitating all housing options for various and a variety of demographics. The county official plan generally permits a second dwelling unit on a property, but it leaves it up to the local official plans or to provide for the detailed policies in terms of the appropriate areas for these and their minimum unit size, access, and parking requirements. So our official plan, which was more recently approved, designates the site agricultural. If you show the attachment 3, you'll see where it's located in the context of that scheduling. You can see that it's designated agricultural. It's in the southern part of the municipality. And under subsection 4.1.2, item 7, ARUs are permitted subject to a zoning bylaw amendment and subject to meeting the following criteria: that the area is subordinate to the primary dwelling unit, that there are no other ARUs on the property, that it shares the same access and is located within the same cluster of buildings as the existing buildings, that it not be eligible for a severance in the future, that there are adequate services, and that parking, tree preservation, landscaping, and provision of amenity areas are adequately addressed. And in light of those criteria, we believe that the subject proposal conforms to the official plan. So in considering the amendment to the zoning bylaw to permit this, council must have regard to the policies in section 10.18. And there are a number of criteria listed there, and those include the conformity of the proposal to the general intent of the and philosophy of the plan and to the provincial policy statement, the suitability of the land and the need for the proposed use, its compatibility with the surrounding area, and the ability of the infrastructure and the road or the transportation system to accommodate the proposal. And again, we believe that this proposal generally conforms and meets those criteria. We also have developed draft guidelines that are in the report that went before council. And those conclude things like the general location, setback size, and height and municipal services for standalone ARUs in the agricultural area. And again, this proposal meets each of those criteria. So subject to hearing any comments tonight from council or for any interested stakeholders, Mr. Mayor and members of council, we support the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, but we are looking forward to hearing any comments and addressing any questions that may arise.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jeffrey. So, okay, if you can maybe stop sharing and then there we go. Thank you. All right, any questions or comments, members of council to Mr. Jeffrey at this time? Okay, we do have delegations, so we do have, is it Mr. and Mrs. Leon?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, welcome to the meeting. And is there any comments that you would like to bring forward?
We just appreciate you guys taking the time to have this meeting with us, and we're really glad that you guys can help us out.
Okay, any, so if there's no questions, and then this is basically the scheduling of a meeting in the future, Mr. Jeffrey?
Mr. Mayor, as this is the public meeting for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, as we noted in our report, if there weren't any issues that arose during this meeting, that we couldn't address immediately, then we would do a follow-up report. But given that there haven't been any significant issues, we will come back to council with a draft zoning bylaw amendment for its consideration at the next council meeting.
So it'd be the second Tuesday in April.
I believe, yeah, it might
Oh,
have
sorry,
changed.
the 7th. Yes. Well, we'll deal with that in the other meeting, but it's the early part of April. Okay. Well, I don't see any questions at this stage here. I have Councillor Houston. I know you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I guess to Chad, I don't have any specific questions with this, ARU application in front of us, but I know as we had spoken last meeting, the impact that these ARUs have on the value of the property or how impact will treat them. I know, we had the opportunity, spoke a little bit earlier today, and really, I don't think impact knows yet of how these will impact or how the ARUs will impact, or, if the property value will increase by, square footage now that's now being added. I have some questions there, but, there's certainly no answers yet from impact. So that's the only, comment I had. When we have a little more clarity, for homeowners, that, putting these in, this is the impact or this is the change that'll have on, the taxable value of the home. I think it's important for individuals to understand doing this, what the impact is, and also for us, the municipality, what the impact is that, all these units, could be potentially be coming through. So that's my only, real comment of how ARUs will impact, property values and taxation.
Well, I see Mr. Kitsos, it popped up. So have you got any insight or have you heard from MPAC in terms of how we would be dealing with these in the future?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to council. Yes, Councillor Houston's comments are correct. We did reach out to MPAC, to our rep at MPAC, and essentially, in short, there are no guidelines in place right now to determine the assessed value. So generally, residential properties are assessed at fair market value. So it's a lot of historical information based on area and similar specifications of the property. So what they did provide us is that they essentially did say that they do not know how exactly it will impact the assessed value. They did say they gave some examples that, if there are permits issued for the build, that generally the assessed value would increase by a fraction of that permit value. But that was just an example. So really no real guidelines on how it would play out for all properties.
Okay. Okay. Any, certainly when I look at Mr. Jeffries, like right across from Town Hall, I can almost see two buildings on the same lot. It's nothing new. We've seen some on Riverside Drive, two residential areas on one lot. And so maybe the size of these units, ARU, are more, they're smaller than the primary home, and certainly in that regards. But I don't see this as something really new. I see it in the community right now, and I can show you examples. And one of them is just coming out of right across from Town Hall. It's a great example of two homes on the same lot. And so obviously we're dealing with taxation with those two, if they're maybe dealt with in a separate fashion. But again, the boundaries of the properties are the same. So, and I think to your point as well, to help obviously the crunch that we have, we all know that in the country we're short 1.5 million homes supply as we speak. And these are opportunities to fill voids. I see opportunities as well where, aging parents on a piece of property, disabled children who want independence, living close to home. So there's a whole host of, I think, great opportunities to meet the challenges of the housing crunch, but also to expand the ability to deal with certain issues where independent living for some would certainly be an opportunity that can be dealt with ARU. So I certainly think that there's some merit and certainly some great opportunities here for a whole host of reasons why this type of housing is there. And I get what the province is trying to do as well, to see the merits of this. And so I think, to your point, Councillor Houston, there's no doubt MPAC will come to figure this out. But in the meantime, I think it's something that we should look seriously in supporting. Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to pick up on your comment. Certainly in my neighborhood, or Ward 1 as a whole, there are plenty of cases like this with two buildings on the same lot. Most of them have been grandfathered under our zoning bylaw. And if anyone does want to take a look and find the specific properties, but they are plentiful in the north part of town. And to my knowledge, I know this is the second time that this site has come to us, and I've never heard any issues whatsoever with this particular site or its compatibility with what's around. So with that, absolutely, these properties can coexist. They have been for many years with the neighborhoods around them. So just wanted to point that out for anybody watching. And certainly, I give kudos to the Leons for operating a very compatible garden suite. And ultimately, I don't certainly take any issue with making it permanent.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, then obviously the report, if there's no further questions, obviously to the Leons, this will be coming shortly to council with a final report and recommendation. Mr. Jeffries has alluded to that. And so if there's no further questions, then if we can move on to receiving the two communication pieces under G 1 and 2. If I have a motion to receive. Councillor Houston and Councillor Jobin on those communication pieces, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Also, the report this evening is the zoning bylaw amendment, existing garden suite temporary use, proposed change to permanent additional residential unit standalone at 7035 10th concessions, scheduling of a public meeting. The motion be to receive that report. Councillor Jobin and Councillor Tonio. Questions or comments in the report? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Well, if there's nothing further to add, then certainly adjournment of this meeting is now in order. Deputy Mayor Becchetti, Councillor Tonio, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Mr. and Mrs. Leon, thank you. And we'll see you shortly next month.
Thank you.
All right, have a good afternoon.